The War of Time, the epic history of how we conquered the calendar. In the midst of the dawn of civilization, when the first farmers looked to the sky seeking divine signs, humanity faced its most elusive enemy, time itself. There were no clocks, no calendars, only the eternal cycle of the sun and moon dancing in a cosmic dance that seemed impossible to decipher. The first men lived in a perpetual present, where the only measure of time was experience. When the almond trees bloom, after 3 full moons, before the rains come. It was a world where the future was as uncertain as shadows at dusk, and where planning beyond a season was an act of blind faith in the gods. But some men, endowed with a curiosity that would forever change the destiny of our species, began to observe. Night after night, generation after generation, they discovered patterns in the apparent celestial chaos, and thus began the longest war in human history, the battle to domesticate time. On the banks of the Nile, more than 5,000 years ago, the first great strategists in this war against time emerged. The Egyptian priests, with their white robes fluttering in the desert breeze, became the generals of a campaign that would last millennia. These wise men observed that each year, when the star Sirius appeared on the horizon just before dawn, the sacred Nile began its annual flood. It was as if the gods had placed a gigantic clock in the sky, marking the exact moment when life was reborn in the lands of the pharaohs. With precision that would marvel modern engineers, they established a year of 365 days, divided into 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 additional days dedicated to the gods. But there was a problem. Their perfect calendar was not so perfect. Every 4 years, it desynchronized slightly with the seasons, like a clock that lags imperceptibly but constantly. The Egyptian priests knew this defect, but decided to live with it. It was the price of simplicity, the cost of maintaining a system that could be understood by scribes and farmers alike. Without knowing it, they had created the first great dilemma that would pursue humanity for the next 3 millennia. Astronomical accuracy or social practicality. While the Egyptians perfected their solar system, in the hills of Rome one of the strangest calendars in history was born. Romulus, the legendary founder of the Eternal City, established a year that would seem completely insane to us today. Only 10 months, beginning in March and ending in December. The first month was Martius, dedicated to Mars, the god of war and mythical father of Romulus. It was logical. Spring was the time to be reborn, to begin new military campaigns, to sow both fields and conflicts. Aprilis followed, possibly derived from aprior, to open, when nature opened its buds and hearts opened to love. Maius honored Maia, the goddess of fertility, while Junius was dedicated to Juno, protector of marriage. Then came the numbered months with brutal simplicity. Quinctilius the 5th, Sextilis the 6th, September the 7th, October the 8th, November the 9th, and December the 10th. And what happened during winter? Simply nothing. The Romans considered the cold months a dead time, a pause in civilized life where one could only wait for March to return. It was as if time itself hibernated along with nature. This system worked for decades, but had a fundamental flaw. The solar year does not respect human decisions. Gradually, the months began to shift relative to real seasons, creating chaos that threatened to destroy Roman agriculture. Around the year 713 BC, the second king of Rome, Numa Pompilius, faced a temporal crisis. The months had shifted so much that religious festivals no longer coincided with appropriate seasons. The gods were being honored at incorrect times, and divine wrath manifested itself in failed harvests and adverse omens. Numa, known for his wisdom and his connection with the gods, made a bold decision. He would steal days from the kingdom of the dead to give them to the world of the living. He added 2 months to the end of the year. Januarius, dedicated to Janus, the two-faced god who looked simultaneously to the past and future, and Februarius, the month of purification. But Numa faced a deep cultural problem. The Romans considered even numbers to bring bad luck. A year with 354 days, even number, was unthinkable. To avoid cosmic misfortune, he added 1 more day, creating a year of 355 days. However, this was still insufficient to synchronize with the sun. Numa's solution was brilliant in its complexity. Every 2 years, he would add an extra month called Mercedonius of 22 or 23 days, inserted after February. It was a system so complicated that only the pontiffs, priests specialized in calendar, could keep it functioning. This created extraordinary power in the hands of the priests. They literally controlled time. They could lengthen or shorten years according to political needs, deciding when magistrates' terms ended or when contracts expired. The calendar became a political weapon as powerful as the legions. During the last centuries of the Roman Republic, the calendar was transformed into a political battlefield. The pontiffs, almost always allied with the dominant patrician families, manipulated time with shamelessness that would have made the most cynical modern politicians blush. Did an allied consul need more time in office? The pontiffs added extra days to the year. Did a political enemy have a contract expiring at an inconvenient date? The month mysteriously lengthened. Did elections threaten adverse results? Suddenly an intercalary month appeared that postponed them. By the year 46 BC, the Roman calendar was so desynchronized with real seasons that the difference was more than 3 months. Harvest festivals were celebrated in the middle of winter, and spring rituals coincided with autumn. Rome, the city that had conquered the Mediterranean world, had been defeated by its own calendar. Merchants didn't know when their debts were due, farmers couldn't predict seasons, and generals didn't know when to plan their campaigns. Time itself had become Rome's most dangerous enemy. In the midst of this temporal chaos, a man whose ambition knew no limits emerged, Julius Caesar. He had conquered Gaul, crossed the Rubicon and defeated Pompey. Now he proposed the most audacious conquest of all: to dominate time itself. Caesar knew the work of Alexandrian astronomers, especially Sosigenes, who had calculated that the solar year had exactly 365 days and a quarter. The solution was brilliant in its simplicity. Every 4 years, an extra day would be added to compensate for those accumulated quarters. But first, Caesar had to fix the inherited disaster. To synchronize the calendar again with the seasons, he declared that the year 46 BC would have 445 days. The Romans called it the Year of Confusion. But Caesar knew it was the necessary price to restore temporal order. On January 1, 45 BC, Rome awoke to a new world. Caesar had established that the year would begin in January, month of Janus, the god who looked backward and forward, not in March as had been tradition for centuries. It was perfect symbolism. Rome looked simultaneously to its glorious past and its imperial future. The months recovered their logical duration. January, March, May, July, August, October, and December would have 31 days. April, June, September, and November would have 30. And February would have 28, except every 4 years when it would have 29. In honor of this temporal revolution, the Roman Senate renamed the month Quinctilis as Julius, July, immortalizing forever the name of the man who had conquered time. Caesar had achieved something no Egyptian pharaoh or Babylonian king had managed: to create a calendar that could last millennia. After Caesar's assassination on the Ides of March 44 BC, his nephew and heir Octavian, who would later become Emperor Augustus, faced a dilemma that would reveal human nature in all its complexity. The month Sextilis August had only 30 days, while Julius July had 31. For a man who considered himself superior to his predecessor, it was intolerable that his month be inferior to Caesar's. Augustus ordered that August also have 31 days, stealing a day from February, which was left with 28, and reorganizing the following months to maintain alternation. This decision, motivated purely by imperial vanity, created the only irregularity in the Julian calendar. The sequence January 31, February 28/29, March 31, April 30, May 31, June 30, July 31, August 31, September 30, October 31, November 30, December 31. It was perfect except for those 2 consecutive months of 31 days in midsummer. Augustus also established that the extra day of leap years would be added after February 23rd, creating a February 24th bis, hence bisextile. It was a tradition that would survive to our days, a linguistic fossil of the vanity of an emperor dead for 2,000 years. The Julian calendar was a masterpiece of temporal engineering, but it had a microscopic defect that would prove catastrophic. The solar year does not last exactly 365.25 days, but 365.2422 days, approximately 365 days and almost 6 hours. The difference was minuscule, barely 11 minutes and 14 seconds annually, but time is relentless with human errors. For centuries, no one noticed the problem. Rome fell, the Byzantine Empire flourished and decayed. Europe plunged into the Dark Ages, and the small error continued accumulating like grains of sand in a cosmic clock. By the 13th century, medieval astronomers began to notice that something was terribly wrong. The spring equinox, which should occur on March 21st, was arriving earlier and earlier. Christian festivals, especially Easter, whose date depended on the equinox, were slowly shifting through the year. The scholars of the time made calculations that gave them vertigo. By the year 1500, the calendar would be advanced by 10 complete days relative to real seasons. The precision that had so prided Caesar was becoming a cosmic lie. In 1572, a Jesuit mathematician and astronomer named Christopher Clavius presented Pope Gregory XIII with a report that would forever change human perception of time. The Julian calendar was so desynchronized that it threatened to destroy the entire system of Christian festivities. Gregory XIII, a pragmatic man who understood that papal authority depended on his ability to maintain temporal and spiritual order, authorized the most audacious reform in the history of time measurement since Caesar. The plan was radical. First, they would skip 10 complete days to resynchronize the calendar with the seasons. Thursday, October 4th, 1582 would be immediately followed by Friday, October 15th. 10 days would simply cease to exist, erased from history as if they had never happened. Second, to prevent future shifts, the leap year rule would be subtly modified. Years divisible by 100 would not be leap years, except those divisible by 400. Thus, 1700, 1800 and 1900 would not be leap years, but 2000 would be. It was an adjustment of extraordinary mathematical elegance. The new Gregorian calendar would have an error of only 1 day every 3,300 years, a precision that surpassed anything imagined by the ancients. But Gregory XIII had underestimated the resistance his reform would encounter. 16th century Europe was fractured by religious wars, and Protestant countries saw the calendar reform as a Catholic trick to impose papal authority over time itself. England, Protestant German Netherlands, and Scandinavia categorically refused to adopt the Papist calendar. This created an absurd situation. Europe literally lived in two different times. A merchant traveling from London to Paris went back 10 days, while one going in the opposite direction jumped into the future. The consequences were both comic and tragic. Birth and death dates became ambiguous. Commercial contracts specified whether they used old style or new style. Diplomats had to translate not only languages but also dates. The most famous case was that of William Shakespeare and Miguel de Cervantes, who supposedly died on the same day, April 23, 1616, but actually died 10 days apart because England still used the Julian calendar. Protestant resistance to the Gregorian calendar lasted for centuries, but reality is stubborn. Protestant astronomers, however much they despised the Pope, could not deny that the Catholics were right about time. Protestant Germany capitulated in 1700. The Netherlands followed the same year. England resisted until 1752, when it finally admitted the superiority of the Gregorian system. By then, the difference had grown to 11 days, so Wednesday, September 2nd, 1752 was followed by Thursday, September 14th. The English transition provoked riots in London. The crowd shouted, "Give us back our 11 days." Workers demanded that their salaries not be reduced for the shortened month. Some even feared that their lives had been magically shortened by 11 days. Russia, faithful to its tradition of resisting Western innovations, maintained the Julian calendar until the Revolution of 1917. Ironically, the October Revolution actually occurred in November according to the Gregorian calendar used by the rest of the world. Today, when we look at our digital calendars, we are contemplating a work of temporal art forged through millennia of errors, corrections, imperial vanities, and religious struggles. Each number in that grid carries with it the history of humanity fighting against its most elusive enemy, time itself. January continues to honor Janus, the two-faced Roman god. March maintains the name of Mars, reminding us that it was once the first month of the year. July and August immortalize the vanity of two men who dominated the Mediterranean world. September, October, November, and December carry numerical names that no longer correspond to their positions. Linguistic fossils of a system that died more than 2,000 years ago. February preserves its 28 days as a reminder of Augustus's arbitrary decision to steal a day from it to aggrandize his own month. And every 4 years, we add an extra day in honor of calculations by Alexandrian astronomers whose names have been forgotten, but whose work still governs our lives. The Gregorian calendar we use today is the result of a war that lasted more than 5,000 years, fought by Egyptian priests, Roman kings, vain emperors, ambitious popes, and obsessive astronomers. It is a monument to human persistence, to our refusal to accept that time cannot be domesticated. Every time we schedule an appointment, plan a vacation, or celebrate a birthday, we are participating in humanity's final victory over temporal chaos. We have transformed the unpredictable dance of the stars into a tool that fits in our pockets, converted cosmic mystery into something so familiar that we no longer remember the miracle it represents. The next time you see a calendar, remember that you are not looking at a simple grid of numbers. You are contemplating the most epic story ever told. The story of how a species of intelligent primates defied the gods, conquered time, and transformed celestial chaos into the order that allows civilization to exist. In those dates live the ghosts of Caesar and Augustus, of Gregory XIII and Christopher Clavius, of all the men and women who dared to believe that time could be tamed. And in a certain sense, they were right. We did not conquer time, but we learned to dance with it with a grace that would have amazed the gods.